Hello everyone and welcome back to Tabletop with Kevin. And today we're doing a review on the latest Chapter Approved mission pack, the Warcraft Nephilim for your Warhammer 40k games. Now if you like what you see, please like the video and subscribe to us if you haven't done it yet. And if you'd like to see more of these kind of videos, hit the notification button to get the latest updates for our next videos coming up. Now I know that the Chapter Approved mission pack was just released in our local stores just last Saturday, and I'm a little bit late to do a run through, but you know what? Better late than never. And the funny thing is that on the same day that I got it, we played a few games and I had a really huge scratch across the book because I think we dragged the book along some terrains and things like that by accident, and it's a little bit heartbreaking. But you know what? It doesn't matter because the content is what's important. So just a little bit of a heads up, I actually have read through a little bit on the Warzone Nakmun, the previous chapter approved, and I'll be doing a bit of comparison with that. And as an Orc player, I actually brought my Orc Codex just for a bit of reference when we go through the faction secondaries. So right now, let's dive in. Alright guys, just a bit of a heads up. Reading a book in video format is going to be a bit of a challenge, but whenever I can, I'm going to give you a bit of snippets here and there about the sections which I'm actually pointing to, so they can actually read along with me as I'm pointing it out. And also at the end of this video, I will be giving a small summary about the major changes for the Warzone Nephilim. So right off the bat, one of the few major changes that you will see in the contents is that it actually includes the faction secondaries. So you have the Forces of Imperium, the Forces of Chaos, and the Xenos Forces. And the other major thing that you actually notice, and if you actually have the previous chapter approved Nakmun, you notice that this chapter approved book is really thick. And mainly the reason why is because there's an inclusion of the Warhammer 40k basic rules over here. So I think that the addition of the rules with this mission pack is really cool because you know what, you don't have to lug around this huge, clunky core book with you, which is like 20 times thicker than this book. And they actually summarize it and just add it on here. So you know what, it's a really quick and easy reference for you. And I really like it. Right, so the very first chapter, which I think is one of the more important ones because of the command points change that we've all been talking about. So for the most part, most of the content is almost exactly the same, but naturally with the new changes, it tells you that when you're building armies, for up to 1,000 points, you have a starting CP of 3, and your Strikeforce battle size with a 2,000 points maximum, you have a starting CP of 6. And whenever you want to take a Warlord trait, you actually have to spend 1 CP, and for a relic is 1 CP. Now they do say that you actually can only take this stratagem just once. Okay, so at least for Orcs, I do know that there is a few more stratagems which allows you to issue Warlord traits to other characters. So don't forget that it's still spending CP to do that. Another thing to take note is that certain characters do have multiple Warlord traits. So from what I've read and from what I've been told as well is that you only have to spend 1 CP in order for you to unlock the Warlord trait, and everything else just comes free. So one example is from Adeptus Custodes, which is the character called Trajan Valoris, if I'm saying that correctly. He has 2 Warlord traits, but in that case you don't have to spend 2, because again, you can only use the stratagem just once, but you only need to spend 1 CP in order for you to unlock those 2 Warlord traits. So I hope that clears it up. Right, over to the next page. Now because of the new changes of your starting CP, so there's an additional section over here which states about taking a super heavy auxiliary detachment. So they says that when you're taking one of that, you can change the command benefits of them to be plus 3 command points if the detachment is not your Warlord, but it is also from the same faction, of course with the exclusion of Chaos Imperium, Eldari or Tyranids. So basically this section is telling you that you will be able to get an additional 3 CP if you're taking this additional detachment. Again, as mentioned, that the rules are generally the same, for the most part, but there is one minor change over here, which is not included in the previous mission pack. It talks about reducing victory points. So some secondary objectives include conditions that can reduce your victory points at the end of the battle. So this portion is just a minor change. You can always read it up, and because that I will not be able to cover every single secondary, so again, just take note that this may be possible. Before we continue, I'm pretty sure people might have heard about that this latest chapter approved Warzone Nephilim, that command points are now awarded 1 CP at every command phase, means yours including your opponent's command phase, compared to the previous time where you're only awarded just 1 during your command phase. Now, this section of the rules is not here in this particular chapter, but I will tell you where later. Anyway, all of these rules, again, I will put it in the summary behind for your easy reference. So again, stay tuned. So moving on to the secondary objectives and the categories, but before we proceed, there's something which is important for you to take note, is that one of the main reasons why this book is so thick is because, apart from the Nephilim secondaries, your faction secondaries will also be included in this book over here. And it is stated very clearly that the secondary objectives that players can select are on page 17 to 53, and players cannot select secondary objectives from a codex or codex supplement. So it's been stated very clearly that you can't take it from your own codex, and I'll show you why later using my Ork codex, but you have to take it from this book. Now there's also another important point which is very different. It now states that in your Warzone Nephilim games, players can now select up to 3 faction secondaries, provided that all 3 of them are actually from different categories. Now this is different from the previous mission pack, Nakmun, where you're only allowed to select 1 faction secondary objective. So do take note that for this new Warzone Nephilim, you're allowed to take up to 3 faction secondaries, provided they are from different categories. Now let's do a bit of a deep dive into the Nephilim secondary objectives. Now for the Push the Enemy category, the assassination objective still remains the same, there's no change to that. For Bring It Down, it's essentially the same, but now there is an additional condition over here, which actually states that you can score 4 victory points for each destroyed models with a wound characteristic of 20 or more. Now this scoring of 4 victory points for wounds more of 20 or more is not included in the previous Warzone Nakmun. So do take note that this is something new, and don't forget to score your victory points from here. Now I think people might have recalled that there's another secondary objective under Purge the Enemy, which is called Titan Hunter. Now Titan Hunter is not in this book anymore, so essentially there are only 2 secondary objectives under Purge the Enemy: Assassination and Bring It Down, and that's it. Now just as a small side note, that at the side over here, which I think is really cool, is that you actually have a list of all the faction secondaries related to the category Purge the Enemy. So it actually lists down all the factions and the relevant chapters, as in your Space Marine chapters, or whatever faction you belong to, and the page that you can actually refer to. So I do think this quick reference is really very helpful to you, and it's very neat. Moving on to the next category, No Mercy, No Respite. Both Grind Them Down and No Prisoners, there are no changes to those secondaries, but there's actually no more secondary called To the Last. Now for the secondary called To the Last, which is no longer included in this Warzone Nephilim, is that you can select 3 units of the highest points chosen, and you can score 5 victory points for each unit that is still alive until the end of the battle. So this particular secondary objective has been removed from this book. So take note, there are now only 2 secondaries under No Mercy, No Respite. Now for the Warcraft Secondaries, both Abhor the Witch and Warp Ritual, there are no changes for those. But you also later realize that there's no more secondary called Pierce the Veil, where you are able to score victory points for doing psychic actions if you're within 6 inches of your opponent's battlefield and more than 6 inches from any enemy models. So that particular secondary has really been removed. Now I left this last one, Psychic Interrogation, for last, is because everything under Psychic Interrogation is the same, but in this Warzone Nephilim there's an additional section to this, and it's going to be a common theme throughout all the secondaries within the book. which is, oh, maybe let me read through the entire thing, then you can have a better idea. So for psychic interrogation, you can score 3 VP each time you successfully complete the following psychic actions. So for a psychic action of warp charge of 4, one psychic character from your army can attempt to perform this psychic action during the psychic phase, and if it's within 24 inches of the enemy character. So you will be able to score VP every time you do this particular action, which is exactly the same as the previous Warzone Nakmun secondary. But, as I mentioned, that this portion over here is going to be a common theme for the other secondaries throughout the book, which is, in addition, if the result of the psychic test is equal or greater to the leadership character of any enemy characters within 24 inch of the cycle unit, you gain 1 command point at the end of the phase. Okay? So basically there will be ways for you to gain command points. Not every secondary has it, and I think not every faction has it, but this is something for you to take note. So this is probably one of the main reasons why you have to refer to the faction secondaries within this book instead of the codexes anymore, because of the addition of these kind of points where you can actually gain more CP by doing the particular action or, fulfill some other conditions like that. Again, this is something which I'll put in the summary for you to take note of. Next up, Battlefield Supremacies. Both behind enemy lines and engage on all fronts, there are no changes to that. But there is no more Stranglehold secondaries, and if you recall what it is, it's basically at the end of the turn, you can score victory points if you have 3 or more objectives and also have more objectives than your opponent. So that particular secondary has been removed. Lastly, for Shadow Operations, raise the banner high, there's no changes to that. There's no changes to retrieve Nephilim data, well, other than a name from Nakmun to Nephilim, so both of these secondaries has no change at all. But do take note that 2 of the previous secondaries, which are Investigate Signal and Deploy Teleport Homers, have been removed. Now for the next few sections are your faction secondaries, and including all your Space Marine chapters as well. So you have the Forces of Imperium. You will definitely have as well your Forces of Chaos, and lastly your Xenos Forces, which I will then turn to my Orc section because I'm an Orc player. Now I'm here on the Orc section because I'm just giving you some reference, because as an Orc player I do have with me my Orc Codex, and I'm going to show to you what may be different here. So under the Orcs, No Mercy No Respite, Storm Them Good has got no changes at all. Under Battlefield Supremacy, Green Tide. Now what's different here is that in the Orc Codex it's stated that you can actually score 3 VP if you have 11 or more models and within 2 quarters of the battlefield zone. And you score 5 victory points if you have them in 4 of them. Now what's different here is that this particular Orcs faction secondary is that at the end of the turn you can score 1 VP for each table quarter that contains 10 or more Orcs. So right now you can definitely see that there is a change in the number of models, the minimum number of models required to be in each quarter, and they no longer have the minimum 2 table quarters for you to start scoring VPs. So this is definitely kind of like a buff, not really a buff, but it's definitely more beneficial using this new secondary. Now for Purge the Enemy category, the biggest and the best, the way the victory points are scored is essentially the same, but now there's actually quite a bit of a different approach. Firstly, there are more ways, and now it's actually a lot easier. Because why? For the first one, instead of those character, monster, and vehicles that has to be destroyed, as long as they lost wounds done by a melee attack inflicted by a warlord, you already score those victory points. Next one, 5 or more models that were destroyed as a result of attacks made by a warlord during this battle round, it is no longer restricted to melee attacks. And now additionally, for these 2 last points over here, an enemy unit that was destroyed as a result of an attack made by a warlord during this battle round is brand new. And lastly, your warlord is within range of an objective marker that you control and is not within your deployment zone. So that also kind of means that in no man's land and in your opponent's deployment zone, you get to score victory points just for being there. Now lastly, for the Shadow Operations, get the good bits. In the Orc Codex, there's a bit of a different way of doing this actually. So in the Orc Codex, basically what it states that for those objective markers that are not within your deployment zones, after both of your deployments, each of you have to alternate, starting with your opponent, to get the good bits objective markers to a maximum of 3 and possibly like minimum 1, something like that. Now for this particular secondary, it actually makes it a little bit more streamlined and a bit easier for you as well. Basically what it's saying is that you don't have to do that step anymore, the alternating between you and your opponent to put the good bits. You can just perform that action at an objective marker that is not within either player's deployment zones. On top of that, they actually said that apart from Orc Core, if a looter or Gretchen performs this action, instead of completing at the end of the turn, it is actually completed at the end of your next command phase. So there's something for you to take note if you're taking these two particular units. But the scoring of victory points is essentially still the same. Now you must be thinking, why would I be, as an Orc player, be looking at the Necron's secondary objectives? Now, this is just another example which I want to illustrate about the kind of theme that these secondaries are adopting. So let me just give you a run through of just one of them, which is Code of Combat. In the Necron Codex, it was originally under No Mercy No Respite category, but it has been changed to Purge the Enemy. And in the Necron Codex, it states that you can score 3 VP at the end of the battle for each enemy unit that was destroyed by the Necron Noble unit. For Nephilim, you can now score 3 VP at the end for each enemy unit that was destroyed by a range. Now they're split between range and melee attack by your Necron Noble, and they actually award different victory points. So that's the difference. But the main thing, as I mentioned, that's the overall theme, is that for the last portion over here, in addition, each time an enemy character unit is destroyed by a melee attack by a Necron Noble, you gain 1 CP. So do your homework, do your own research, and don't forget to get your command points from your secondaries. Now for the next 2 chapters, the Incursion missions and the Strikeforce missions, all the missions are basically exactly the same. So remember what I was talking to you about, the command points are awarded during each player's command phase and not just your own, but also during your opponent's. This is where you find them. So as part of the mission rules, again, this whole section, everything is exactly the same for your missions, but the only difference that they've added is here. In the mission, at the start of each player's command phase, both players get 1 CP, not just the players whose turn is in. So this is basically where you find them. So on the last chapter of the Warzone Nephilim book, you have your basic rules, and this is basically majority of all the rules that you need, and the references basically at your fingertips. They even cover all your rarer rules, such as like heroes intervention, types of terrain, what kind of covers that they would give, and things like that. But after glancing through, I think I did not find anything about creating your Battleforge army. So I think this is something that I will try to cover on a different video that is working together with the Warzone Nephilim's command point changes. Alright everyone, that's it for the review on the Chapter Approved Warzone Nephilim. Now I will be showing some of the important things which I've discussed today on the right side of the screen while I talk about my thoughts on this new Chapter Approved Nephilim. So first things first, I do think that the reduction of the command points from 6 to 3 for your 1000 point games is really very hurtful to your army. The reason why is because if you were to take your Warlock trait and the Relic, at least for an Orc player, you only be left with 1. Or essentially, we do have other stratagems in order to award 1 more either Warlock trait or Relic to someone else, but that would actually mean that you started off with just 0 CP. Now assuming that I do start with 1 CP, and when the game starts, well, whosoever turn, I'll get 1 more, which is 2. Orc stratagems tend to be on the more expensive side. Alright, we have very few stratagems that allows you to for you to spend 1 CP to use them. Most of the stratagems are only 2 CP. So that kind of means that I will not be able to play very defensively, and if I do play defensively, means I cannot be more offensive the next round. Also, the lack of command points restricts the things that you can do as a whole. Given that your HQ characters can only take 1 Warlock trait and Relic, potentially lowering the amount of CP that you start with, it kind of means that other HQ characters that you take would not be able to live up to their full potential. For example, One popular combo that I like to use for my war boss in Mega Armor is Brutal but Cunning. So basically it means that for his 5 attacks or 6 attacks, he can reroll and try again to maximize the number of melee attacks done onto the enemy model. Whereas you see, if I were to use Gaskul and the war boss, that would actually effectively reduce my command points to almost 0. So that can be tough. Another thing that I was thinking about is that your stratagems, for Orc stratagems, are so expensive at 2 command points. I literally have to wait 2 turns for me to accumulate enough for me to do a one-time strike. Now this also means that in the previous games where you have sufficient CP, you can do something more like an alpha strike, and you can spam as many stratagems as possible for you to take down as many enemy models as you can. But now in this case, with this new ruling, most likely we will not be able to see more of that. I think now players may start to be a bit more reserved, but that's just my opinion only. So everyone, I want to thank you for watching this video. Do remember to like this video and subscribe to us if you haven't done it yet. And if you can, do leave a comment. If you like this video, give a shout out. And if you think there are parts of this video that you think I can improve on, leave the comment and I'll be happy to hear them. Anyway, thanks everyone and see you next time.